first for them. I've actually had several short stories and anthologies of theirs as well, which is how I got connected with them. And Chris, who's currently manning the...
Sorry, I have to fix it. Both actually were author. And graphic novel.
Yep. I've been very, very lucky to have gotten a lot of really good people around me, and Chris is one of those people, as you'll hear. Okay, so the third sign, as I said, came out a few years ago, and the third sign was an epic fantasy. It did eventually sell, it did eventually get published, but one of the things that I found when I was trying to sell the book is that I got a lot of a similar response, which was, we really like this, but it's very traditional epic fantasy, and traditional epic fantasy is oversold. So I heard the term oversold a whole bunch of times. The person who ultimately bought my book, the editor, pointed out that the reason it's oversold is because people are buying it, right? Like by definition, lots of people want to buy the books that are oversold. But in any case, I got that a lot. And so even though the book sold, I said, that's it. I'm not going to have this happen to me again. I will write something incredibly different that no one's ever written before. And so I sat down to write Icarus, which was about a young man with wings who falls into the heart of a dormant volcano and meets Jelinek, who's about a 3.5 to 4 foot tall, red-skinned prospector who searches for flame petals, which are the source of energy down in this place, which is called Maul, and has a two-tailed solar called Rig, with eyes that go diagonally and scales and fur, who can survive baths in lava. And Icarus, when he falls, has amnesia, and the two of them have to find it out, and it's told from their alternating perspectives. And they said, there, that's not been done before, how about that? And so when I submitted that, then what I got was, this is so different, we don't know what to do with it. And after banging my head against the desk a few times, I said, all right, I've got to figure out what I can do. And one of the interesting things that came up about that for me was, well, what am I ultimately going to do with this work? Because I was proud of it, and I felt like there was something that could be done with it, I just didn't know what. So I put it to the side, and I worked on other projects. Fast forward now to last year, 2013, when I was at the Origins Convention as an attending professional author, which is held every year in Columbus, Ohio, by the way. If you get a chance to go out to that, I recommend it. So the Writers' Library is a group of professional authors, and one of the groups of people that were there were these publishers, Silence in the Library. It was a smaller press that was probably best known. I've actually spoken to some people here about them, best known for their anthology work. Their first anthology was called Time Travel Tales, which came out in 2000, originally started in 2012, and ultimately came out in 2013, and was funded on Kickstarter. It had a goal of initially about $7,000 and ended up funding at almost 30. At the time, it was by far the most successful anthology in Kickstarter's history, and it began a string of successes from them. Probably the most famous and successful one is a very recent one called Athena's Daughters, which got attention on Boing Boing and others, which is an exclusive female anthology, all women writers, a female editor, all of it was done exclusively by an all-female team, and also, by the way, about a female protagonist. That ended up making about $50,000. One of the things that was interesting about these projects was, as we were in the process of looking at them, it showed that there was a market for this kind of stuff. It wasn't just, anthologies don't sell and no one knows what to do with them. They do sell. The question is, where can you find the audience? Where can you find the people who actually want to find this stuff? So Silence in the Library had a track record. And when I was with them, the stories that were done, I mentioned this third time right here, when I was with them looking at Silence in the Library, I was impressed with their work. And there was a series of illustrations that had been done. That's their latest anthology of prose and time travel tales. But there was a series of illustrations that had been done by an artist whose name is Matt Slay for the interior illustrations of that book. Each short story got its own anthology illustration, and Matt is the one who did all of them. I really liked what Matt did. He was a professional, is a professional artist who does work, for example, with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which you see above. And I was really impressed with the stuff that he did with my story. The first story, ironically enough, was in fact the prologue to Icarus, something I had originally submitted a couple of years before to them. And so the initial sort of version of the story that they had, this was the image that Matt had come up with. Now the image since then has changed rather substantially about who Icarus actually is and what he looks like. But I found a lot about that image to be very striking. This image of Icarus standing up after he's hit the ground from having fallen into the heart of this volcano and walking forward. And as you'll hear in a minute, there's an encounter that he has with the creature that he falls on top of as well. But this image was very visually striking to me. And it wasn't the first one that was like that. This is my short story Sanction, which was published in that book, Time Travel Tales, and Matt again illustrated this. One of the things I noticed about Matt's work was that everything that he did relating to the stories was tying into something important about the work narratively. That is to say, it wasn't just, oh, the book is called, the story is called Sanction, I'm going to write it about some guy standing in front of the temple. I can't tell you without spoiling it why this is important, but if you get a copy of the book, which I'm selling at the exhibition hall, and see the story, you'll understand why having an ant looking up at a hill with flags makes sense. But it was not something I would have thought of myself had he not said, this is the image that sort of popped into my mind. So he and I talked about it, and I spoke with Ron Garner, the CEO of Thompson Library Publishing, and we agreed that a graphic novel could really work very well. So we agreed to do a graphic novel and Kickstarter, which began in January. One of the things that was important for us as we were working through this was to give our Kickstarter backers a lot of good ideas about where it was we were going with the project. One of the things you'll sometimes see with Kickstarters that don't work are these sort of vague, generalized promises that don't actually lead to anything specific. So they'll say, you know, we plan to do X, Y, and Z, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to do the other, but we don't actually get anything that talks about, and therefore, here's the product that's going to be at the end, you know, at the end of the rainbow. That may be because they don't even know what the product is at the end of the rainbow. It's just sort of like step one, get a lot of money, step two, question mark, step three, profit, and step two is the problem, right? So one of the things that we wanted to do was show people that we had ideas all along about how the characters were going to look and how the story was going to unfold. This is an early reference sketch of the character of Icarus. And I love some of the notes that he's placed with it as well. The figure when wings are blowing, backlight the figure when the wings are blowing, high forehead to emphasize eyes, pointy hair, white leather triple belt. This was really important because it gave us a chance to go back and forth about how the character was going to look visually. Icarus is always a very visual story, and I wanted it to sort of be reflected in the art as well. And we had a few of these reference sketches which we released in Kickstarter backers. I already mentioned Icarus. This is the character of Jelinek, who's that prospector that I mentioned before. Again, really getting the feel of what the character was like in my mind. The leather headpiece, the goggles that he wears, the heavy hood for the added head and neck protection, the things you would expect a prospector who sort of goes out and kind of freelancing digs for, you know, things below the surface of the earth. That's what you would expect someone like this to be wearing. Jelinek's voice, as you'll hear when I read this in a minute, is very sort of Old West, Gabby Hayes, if you know that old movie actor, kind of like sort of very laid-back, slangy sort of style of speech, and that we wanted to be reflected in the visual as well. So we sent this to the Kickstarter backers also. And then lastly, Rig, that Solar that I mentioned, is pet, if you will. Rig, who I will fully admit is partially modeled on my own daughter. Rig is a character that can be both fearsome, which is this, and also kind of a goofball, which is this. And those two things together are really what make Rig work. So here, what we wanted to do was emphasize there was some dogness to him, but also a lot of differences. The sort of sweep of his back, the look, which of course you can't see here, but in the full color drawings, the look of the scales that are also fur, the two tails, the diagonal eyes. There are a lot of substantial differences between them. So the idea was to sort of remind people of the dog without going, oh, well, this is obviously a mastiff or something like that. Again, the more that we can be specific about those images, the better it was going to look to the Kickstarter backers instead of making people know what we're doing. Ultimately, then we started to release full color art like this cover. You see that picture up here as well. This is the cover of the graphic novel Icarus. And again, besides the sort of coloring and shading, by the way, because everything is watercolor and ink, not digital, so this stuff is transferred to digital later on. And it gives it a kind of texture, I think, a different feel that other work might not necessarily have. And one of the things that we wanted to work on then was being able to provide a sense of what people would see in the finished product in terms of coloration and lighting and things like that. And I'll also give Chris a pop here, because Chris was also responsible in large part for working on the layout of this and actually making it look reasonable so that the names popped out from the cover and didn't just sort of blend and fall into the background. Chris deserves a lot of credit for the work on that as well, and it's about this point where Chris started to get more heavily involved in the project. So what I want to do now is actually give you a chance to hear a little bit of the story set to this, and give you a sense of what the story actually sounds like. One of the things that we will, that I'll try to sort of suggest as I'm going through this presentation is that although the graphic novel 5, 10 minutes or so, just to give you a little bit of a flavor of what it is. When Icky fell into the volcano, making one hell of a racket when he landed, I didn't know then that he always made entrances like that. That was the first I laid eyes on him. I was out digging for flame petals with Rick. Like usual, Rick was belly aching about having to do work. And like usual, I was telling him to shut up. How are we going to make it if we don't have something to sell? I says. And he gives me those big eyes of his and he moves glares down like always when I yell at him. No, I'm not going to hear it, you, I says. You don't do all that much work, you know. What if I treated you like other people treat their solos? And he pretends not to hear me, you know, snuffing around and scratching his ear, waving those two tails like he's got an itch he can't scratch. I could, you know, I says. I could keep you caged up for as long as I want. No one would give it to me. There's lots of things solars ought to be treated like pests, you know, like flicker breads or something. And of course, he looks up at me and starts wailing, you know, so sensitive that freaking thing, which is pretty funny for something that stands about as tall as I do, which, okay, it ain't very tall, but still. Yeah, never mind that, I says. I'll just think about it, you know, maybe a nice cage, maybe some magister ice around it or something. And then Reed just loses it, you know, just starts crying and howling and carrying on, and I start thinking about making some flame beam or something, and then little Reed said, all right, I says finally, quit the funeral, I won't cage you. But you gotta do your work, or I can't even afford to buy a cage, or keep the house. You gotta do the work. And he jumps up and starts running around, you know, trying to jump on me and practically knocking me into a lava flow. Yeah, enough, I said, let's just get to it. And off he goes like a flicker graph flying away from the pool, bounding ahead of me and sniffing like he's got something stuck up his nose. Rig's a pain sometimes, but I gotta say there ain't no better solar west of the hole, not when it comes to finding flame petals. They grow below the ground, and the flow still moves a bit, and it's way too hot for most of us around it. For solar, well, you can throw them in fresh lava and they barely feel it. But a lot of them can't really smell it with the dam, and a lot of the rest are too wild to use. That's why folks tend to stay away from them. You get one side of those tails flying, red fur bristling, and of course those teeth and those crazy sideways eyes, and those just tempt it away. I can't say it's a blame him. Rick is wild too, I guess, but only because he don't want to listen sometimes. But he's not dangerous, at least ways not to me. He's a big baby, to tell you the truth. But he can smell all right. I've seen him sniff out a pellar from half a mile away when most solars would have been running in circles, even though he tried to eat it when he found it, like usual. I told him 100 times not to eat those things. They don't show their spikes till after they're swallowed. But he won't listen, and then I have to hear him howling for 10 centicycles until he finishes digesting. Not the biggest brain in the ball, for sure. But still, he can find those flame petals when he's got a mind to it. On his best solar cycle, I've seen him find 10. Not all ways down. But for a while, we've been coming up pretty light. 2, 3, maybe 4 on a good solar cycle, and I was starting to get worried. I got bills to pay, you know. Rick took us over the West Plains a good way, sniffing and scratching the ground, and a couple times I thought we had something. He'd stop, smell, dig a bit. But each time we only got down a bit to the dirt, and he was off again to the next set. Oh, no worries. Even in the best days, you get a couple of false starts. But nearly a full cycle went by and nothing. Not even a broken flame petal, something I could maybe try to plant and get something out of it. Finally, Rig sat down panting, and I didn't blame him. I was tired as a madman myself, and I couldn't have gone much further. So I plopped myself down on a rock, and I waited, taking a stick and a canteen now and again as I moved about while Rig rolled around and waited for me to move. We come a lot further than I thought before, almost near the central plains. And this wasn't territory I knew too well, except to be careful of. You hear stories, you know, tales of folks vanishing without a trace, crazy tales of crazy people, I always say, but still. You don't live long out here without knowing how to keep your eyes open and your ears near the ground as much as you can. Mountains rose up to the north, up where some say the fur dogs live, if you still think they're alive like some fool people do, but, you know, no offense meant to one of them. And to the south, a lava pool with the salamander kings. To the east, I could make out the stretch of jagged rock that covers the central plains. And far in the distance, farther than I could see, farther than I've ever been to, was the hole. And beyond them, the east plains, at least way if I remember what my dad told me when I was just old enough to be foolish. Don't go that far, son, he used to say. You don't go any farther than you need to go to get by. You stay in the places you know you'll never be caught napping. And it never was. These ways, not until I met him. No, if I stayed in the West, where folks are, oh, hell, they ain't decent exactly, but at least you know the kind of damn fools they are. Maybe I was too tired, maybe I was too busy living in some damn fool memory, but either way, I must not have been paying attention for a while, a sudden, Riggs hits the ground and yelping and nearly scares me into falling up my rock. It might have been better to fall anyway, because when I looked up, what should I see but the last thing I would have expected? 7 feet tall, red horns, tail, spiky fur, teeth that don't fit proper inside the mouth. Yep, sure enough, flame demon, and there he was, right in front of us, gnashing his teeth and his eyes so wide they could drop down his head. Maybe he was trying to decide which one of us to eat first, or maybe he was just having fun. But anyways, he didn't move at first. Just looked at us with that crooked smile on his face. Frankly, I just about gave it up there and spent most of my last cycles alive cursing myself for being so stupid. First of all, you almost never see flame demons this far west. But like I said, I didn't know this territory too well. Things had been kind of strange lately. And if we hadn't been so desperate for a couple of lousy flame hills, we wouldn't have been out so far from home anyways. And besides, I should have been paying closer attention. Now he was in it for sure. And I just felt bad for Rig mostly. I mean, me, I'm just a washed up prospector, you know, but he don't know any better. And if it wasn't for me, maybe he'd be running around somewhere free instead of getting eaten alive. And wouldn't you know it, the damn fool Solar stepped in front of me growling as if it could do anything against the flame. Well, Solars ain't small, you know. I mean, they can defend themselves, but against the flame. Come on now, I said in a low voice, holding my search stick like a fool while the demon stepped forward. Come on, you don't want no Rig here. You let him go and deal with me. I got what you want anyways. And I held up my stick and I got ready to do some damn foolish thing like yell and charge or something like that. But just then I thought I heard a sound above us, kind of a whisper, and I took a step back. The demon raised his claw and got ready to swipe, but he never did. All of a sudden, something hit him head on from above, some flurry of white feathers, and down he goes in a heap while Big and I jumps back. First, I couldn't tell what happened, but then I saw the demon get to his feet, shaking his head and screaming bloody murder, and I saw the other thing get up as well. Even now, I can't explain what it was like to see it stand. Tall, thin, 2 arms, 2 legs, curly brown hair, white skin, and young. But this expression on his face was kind of serene, you know, like it knew what was going to happen. That's what amazed me the most. That and what it had on his back. Because that demon comes up swinging and screaming, you know, and then it comes, and the other one just smiles, and all of a sudden I saw it unfold these wings I saw. Wings, I tell you, white feathered wings about as wide as the body was tall and outstretched. The demon stopped, and then it roared again and came in, and the other thing, well, it just lifted its arms, you know, and all of a sudden those wings glowed blue, and blue light shot out all over the place, and I fell backwards and running. After the scream, and then a sigh, and then nothing at all. And when I looked up and I could see, there it all was. Rig on the ground, whimpering like a baby, some pile of ash that I think used to be a flame demon, and that other creature lying on the ground with his eyes closed, those huge wings folded beneath him. Entrances, I tell you. That kid knew how to make an entrance. Okay, so that's the prologue, and that's sort of what it looks like alongside with this. Yeah, plug it in. Yeah, let me just plug that in. So one of the things that you might have noticed as I was reading through that is there are these sections where I'm not changing the pictures because, and I'll admit this is a little the same pictures over 1,000 words. That's definitely true. Sections that mean that I have to take a page at least to be able to describe the photos. And a picture or two. And so when I started talking to my publisher of the article, they said, oh, well, this will be about maybe a 100-page graphic novel or something which is about 300 pages in manuscript. I was kind of like, okay, that's but it was interesting because it showed me a little bit about the differences between the 2 styles and things that we had to keep in mind as we were working from one stage to the next. But I think the biggest part of it for me was looking at the process of the world that I imagined in my head coming visually to life in the way that you saw it, and things that I hope you agree were striking, at least they were striking to me in those images. That has been quite a rush, and it's something that's been really fun to watch happen. Okay, Chris, you want to sort of take over talk a little bit about the game side of this?
So, as I mentioned, I'm at Greg Twitch.tv. The website, if anybody's not familiar with it, it's one kind of like you. my day job is pharmacy. But everybody has all these interests in addition to the daily work, which allows them to come together and sort of bring some ideas like this. So we decided we're going to turn Icarus into a video. Greg's book has really, as you guys heard, his style of writing. There's a lot of details there. You want to actually,
We can talk about
okay, so basically, I got a copy of Icarus, read it, from I think that actually from the Kickstarter, there's stretch goals that we did that people got in touch a certain amount. Those stories by other authors. They make their own other I got and this will allow a story of Icarus for the audience. So I'll see this people that might be younger or might not know about the book or the graphic novel, but they'll find the game and then they'll find out about Greg and so on and so forth. So when you're working on these projects, you're bringing them to different audiences in just a way to discuss them more part of the reason we got together. Like I mentioned before, we're kind of a style of realism, and because the story is all written out, gameplay is also going to be narrative driven. Gameplay mechanics are important in video games, but if you don't have a good story behind it, it's not going to And because of my film background, I do like cinematics, and because of the storyboard that the graphic novel gives us, I think there's a strong cinematic element. Like I said, I want to do an adventure game because that's accessible to all age groups, but I'm also going to add RPG elements. I think every game coming out has some sort of progression for characters, even the shooter games that are pretty well in this new Destiny moving forward. Mentioned already the platforms. We're also going to be using the Unreal Engine 4. Unreal Engine is made by Epic Games, who made the Gears of War series service as North Carolina. What this does is allows people to come in that are artists and make the assets for the game without knowing anything about game design and game code. Unreal Engine does the work, and basically, if you're interested in game design, all you have to do is spend a month or two watching YouTube videos, how to work with the system, and then you can go in and games take obviously a long time. We're hoping to get past pre-production by the end of this year. So the novel is going to be out hopefully in November, right? And we're trying to get full production going right after that in January. And so it's going to take about a solid 6 months of getting the assets done, another 6 months of testing, and looking for release in quarter 2 of 2016. So, because we're in pre-production, all I really need right now is the artists. Um, we've got a three-person team signed on so far. And, I can give you guys the websites later if you're interested in this sort of thing. So we got Alex Fun doing environment concepts in 2D. Justin Vince does our 3D character sculpts. And Darren Beers does our visual design. He's the visual lead for most of the but I'll show you some examples. Obviously, Matt Slate has one certain style, watercolor. Watercolor, we've done some tests. It doesn't really transfer over to the three-dimensional game aspect, so we're bringing in other artists and everything. It's another cool thing we can do with this is we can give other artists a playground in the story to express themselves, and we can show different styles. So Darren Beers, he's our Photoshop painter, so he does our visual vocabulary. They'll be coming in to do sort of the detail planning of our props and everything. I think this is something we did for Chronicle. And we have, I posted this here. This is a caricature of Gabe Newell from Valve Software that they're using online. Gabe Newell is known in the gaming circles pretty well. There's a game created like Half-Life and Half-Life 2, speculation about if they're running 10 years. But they run a game distribution platform called Steam, which is the biggest PC game distribution. Anyway, he made this caricature of this guy fighting zombies. So they had a zombie game that was going out. But because he posted this on some website, it went viral. And now it's thousands and thousands of Twitter followers. And basically, that commission for doing this art and business is backed up. We'll talk a little bit later about Twitter and how to promote it to server. Definitely, the more you post wherever you are, you never know when it will go viral. So he meant this as a joke, but it really led him to make money for us to do. This is some work from Justin. He does his 3D sculpts on the computer, and they're really detailed. You can see there's all these etchings and the armor and things, and these are actually characters that end up getting printed for board games. So they 3D printers and or place molds, and what he does on the computer ends up creating characters. So now sculpting is really turning into one of those issues. There's some more sculpts that he's done. Some more game board pieces. This is Alex Bond. She does the 2D planning, so she'll take like a scene from the book, and I'll be like, well, we need to look for how this Jelani's house is going on the inside, and she looks something like this up in about an hour to 2 hours. But she also work out all the props, angles, so my 3D modelers can come in and just look at this and know exactly what it means. But pretty much, I picked it because of her attention to detail. So these are all people we met on Twitch and through like my online school and everything. So if you're really into sort of give an idea to starting any sort of project, I used to say 6 degrees of separation right now that we're 0 because now you guys know us for instance. And to us, you know, like publishers and everybody just sort of comes together on doing that. There's no distance separation. People out. There's some work that's done. Testing different color schemes before the level designer would have to implement lighting within many hours when it's set up. We just do it like this real quick. See what it's like and deal with it. So that's pretty much that for the game. Now, did you want to talk about how we actually promoted the Kickstarter?
Yeah.
And
So once we get a chance to decide and part of what we had to do, all of those were what this was not originally what I expected when I got involved in it. It just happened to be what I do. It was a hobby, and I thought it was something fun to do. But I've actually found it's been enormously beneficial in a lot of ways, not only for my own career as a writer, but also for promoting a project of this kind. When we ran the Kickstarter, I had at the time somewhere around the 1,200 followers on my channel. That number is now about 2,140. That group of people are people that know, this is why I wanted to broadcast this live to them. They are interacting with each other on the chat as we're going through this right now. They are from all over the world, and so we've had orders and interest from all over the world, including someone who gave us $800 for a project in Portugal, who was found through someone that connected to the Twitch channel. So the people that connected to us through the Kickstarter, it was a big boost. These are the evangelists, right? The people who go out and say, we know this guy, we think his work is good and it's valuable. And that, I think, is really important. What you hear over and over again from publishers now is even large publishers are looking for authors with platforms with some kind of base of operations in which they can operate, in which they can do their work. The most important thing is the work. I'd like to think that I spent enough time on this that the work stood on its own. But beyond that, you need to be able to promote it somehow. So one of the things that Twitch did for us is to give me this platform from which I was able to promote this work and reach out to like-minded people that thought me interesting in other ways and was able to sort of find this work as well. But it's not just that. Also convention appearances, things like what I'm doing here with you folks. I've done this in countless other conventions throughout the last few years at places like Gen Con and Origins and at Astra in Canada and ReaderCon in Boston and World Fantasy and WorldCon, getting in contact with people that I know from the author community, the writing community, editors and authors and artists and people like that, so that I'm able to draw from them as well. So that in a way, I feel a little bit like the most important thing I did, I hope, was to produce the work of Icarus. But the secondary thing, which was also important, was to operate a little bit as sort of the head of a team that is then able to go out and produce these different aspects of the work. And it's one of the reasons that I wanted Chris on board, because I knew from many conversations with Chris, this was a guy who, lived, breathed, and ate the games. He knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he had a vision, not just for how to design the game, but how to see it through to its completion. Because I wasn't just interested in kind of maybe we'll do sort of if we can do the other thing in Orpheus Cloud. We wanted something that was very specific and doable, and I think that's what Chris was able to bring to the table, also with the right mind for something like this as well. So we promoted this, as I said, through Twitch. We also promoted it through online channels like Facebook. There was an Icarus Facebook page. Like Twitter, there was an Icarus Comic Twitter feed. Like our own Twitters, I have a Twitter feed as well, and a Facebook, and of course I already have a website in place. So all of those online networks, author friends networks, face-to-face contacts, things like I made at Comic Cons like this. Yesterday, Chris and I did the Pittsburgh Comic Con in Monroeville, and then we drove over to here to be able to do this one. So this kind of face-to-face networking was important also. But the key thing was always to suggest to people that there was #1 momentum about this project, and #2 that it's going to get done. And that when it gets done, it's going to be the start of something cool, not just the end. Getting people invested and feeling as as if they're part of what's going on. So they're part of the Icarus team, if you will. They want to see it do well because they feel like they're a part of the project from the beginning. That was really important also, and it was something which was really critical to the overall success of it. So those were promotional aspects. We even ran a couple of contests, which was this idea on the Twitter feed. People who retweeted a certain number of things would be entered for a signed copy of my book. I think was one example, and other stuff like that. So these are all things that we did to kind of continually build interest. But the main focus was making sure we had people who liked the project enough that they went out to tell other people about that project also. Because we firmly believe that is the best way to do it. We don't have millions and millions and millions of dollars to drop into marketing commercials and billboards. What we do have is people power. And when you talk about crowdsourcing and crowdfunding, that is exactly what it is. 5 years ago, authors wouldn't go near, most serious authors wouldn't go near so-called self-publishing venues or places like Kickstarter. Now, Kickstarter is the largest funder of graphic novels in the world. And I'm convinced that the reason for that is because people have decided to start going directly to the artists the way it was way back in the day before publishers got involved and try to go directly to them. So, although I continue to be traditionally published also, and I'm very happy to work with traditional publishers as well, the new hybrid author model is what a lot of authors I see are doing, where a lot of them are doing things like this and reaching out to their various bases and venues and things like that online, like Twitch, for example, to be able to reach out to those people directly rather than just publishers. And ultimately, that's led us to where we are here. The Kickstarter, which was a goal initially of 7,500, and then ended up funding about 16,000. And the reason that we went to just about 200% of the goal is because of all these things that we put into play. Now the key is to fulfill it, and that's the next stage when it's done in November, then to see how it does once it's actually on the shelves. And it will be on the shelves, distributed in bookstores and comic book stores, not just available online, but available when you walk into a store, you'll be able to see it in a lot of these places, and that's also a very important strategy. So, we have, I think, a few minutes, I believe, for questions. If people had any about this project, or about crowdfunding, crowdsourcing in general, or anything of that sort. Sure.
How was your initial Kickstarter for the Icarus graphic novel setup?
So the initial setup was we had a series of obviously pledge goals that people could get at to get a copy of the game, a copy of the book. So when they first came in, there was one goal which was like, I don't know, $5, which was sort of like, thank you and Godspeed. People who wanted to support us but didn't necessarily want a copy of the book. I believe the lowest pledge level which you got a copy of the book was, I believe, $10 or something around there for a digital copy of Icarus. And then progressively, as you went up in pledge levels, you would get more of that sort of thing. So you would get $20, for example, you would get a digital copy of Icarus and a digital copy of a previously published book by Silence in the Library, my publisher. Once I mentioned it to the Time Travel Tales thing, for example. That would be the case at the $20 level. The $25 level would add another short story anthology and so on. When you get up to the $30 and $35 range is when you started getting print copies. So then you would get a print copy of this book when it was released. And at a higher level, you would get a print copy of that book plus a print copy of the anthologies that I mentioned before. And it continues to work in that direction. The very highest tiers, which where I mentioned the $800 one, the highest one was something in the order of, I think, $1,500, bless you, $1,500 to $2,000, and that was actually for a picture of the person who was contributing that amount of money would actually be made into a comic portrait, which will be at the back of the Icarus book. And someone did in fact get that, and they will be immortalized as the Magister in the back of the book, which is kind of a cool thing. It's different. It's not something which anyone else would be able to get access to, and so they were able to fund it at that level. And they got all the other stuff. They got the copies of the digital, and they got the copies of the print, and so on. So that was how we set it up as far as the budget levels are concerned. As far as the stretch goals are concerned, once we reached our goal, which as I say was around $7,500, $8,000, beyond that, we started to add stretch goals by bringing in other authors to do stories in this universe. So, for example, we had Maxwell Alexander Drake, Michael Stackpole, if there are any Star Wars fans here, Flying Jedi or Rogue Squadron, that was Mike Stackpole. He is doing a short story set in the Icarus universe, which is going to be published as well as a part of that overall book. So at the end of the book, there's a section at the end with short stories. Each of those short stories also has its own individual artist illustration. So, for example, Gail Martin, who's a New York best-selling Times author, who has produced a short story in this world, she has an illustrator, Peroni, Joe Peroni, who does Star Wars art. And so the Star Wars art is going to be, the Star Wars artist is doing a picture of her do was not only to get people excited about wanting to go over those extra stretch goals because they get more stuff, more of the stuff they want, more writing, more reading, is also that it means that we have more fan bases to appeal to. Now we have Gail's fan base, Mike's fan base, Max Drake's fan base, and so on. And all of those people kind of contribute to that, especially Gail.
Gail was getting close to her stretch goal. When she saw that the Kickstarter was going to be able to let her write the story, she went crazy on Twitter. And you can see there's a website called KickTrack, track with a T or a T, where you can start a Kickstarter, you can see the statistics. And we lined ours up with our Twitch streams, our Twitter blasts, and also some of the other authors. There's spikes in donations, like huge spikes.
Yep.
Stuff happening.
Yeah, so that was a big part of it as well. One comment I want to make about that, I think sometimes Kickstarters go off the rails a bit when they add stuff that isn't really relevant to the project. They go to Kickstarter like, here, have some t-shirts or have some hats. You know, I'm sure some people like that, but for me, when I back a Kickstarter, if I'm backing a Kickstarter, I want more of that somehow. If I'm backing a book, I want more stories. If I'm backing an art book, I want more art. I don't want more stuff. You know, I don't want more shirts and hats and things that aren't related to the overall project, unless you're backing something about the awesome t-shirt company that goes to Kickstarter, then I guess you want more t-shirts, but that's not the thing which is focused on, so we want to make stretch goals.
The other thing about stretch goals, a lot of Kickstarters have a big pitfall. And they make stuff that's expensive to do the shipping, huge thing. You do not want. That's why I tend to say the more stuff you can do digitally or incorporate to your base product, like the stories that are to the back you're already making, the better. If you add stretch goals, there's been, I mean, you know some examples. There's some like companies that almost bankrupted because they had to, you know, they just shipping.
Steve Jackson games, you guys play much here know about those games. Steve Jackson wrote it, has a game called Ogre that funded on Kickstarter. It was enormously successful, so they added all these extra people, and then they didn't account for all the extra shipping, and it almost bankrupted them to fill all of those orders. Now they're fine, Steve Jackson, so he was able to recover and they're okay, but it was a lesson learned. If you're going to do something with Kickstarter, the extra stuff cannot be, as you talked about before, extra work for you or extra money for you. You need to be able to add stuff like digital shipping, which doesn't cost us anything extra to do. That's something you need to minimize your extra investment and maximize what people think they're getting in value from whatever extra that you're giving them. So that sort of thing is really important. And yeah, there are companies which have not thought about shipping. Shipping is expensive.
Obviously, budgeting project from the get-go. The other thing I would say is doing a Kickstarter, having that sort of venue, and it doesn't have to be Twitch, it can be Facebook, it can be Twitter, it can be whatever group you're a member of. Have an initial group of maybe 15 to 20 people that you know are going to invest in day one. That first day usually makes or breaks a Kickstarter. I think if you fund between 30 and 40% of the first weekday, you're almost guaranteed that you're going to fund the whole project, which we did. If you don't fund 10% of the first weekday, you're going to have a really hard time trying to get different avenues. Because the best thing that can happen to Kickstarter is for the Kickstarter main page to show your Kickstarter front page. And they do this to something that appears funds at a high level.
Yeah, we were one of the top 10 of the graphic novels Kickstarter for almost the entire 30-day process, almost every day. We were in that top 10 list. Oh, yes, please. Okay, yeah, please.
Okay, mine is a bit shorter. Mine concerns more on the general issue of Twitter. You're talking about Twitter interaction.
Yeah.
The website I'm currently Twitter for, even when we're 6,000 followers on Twitter, we can barely get a response. We get one hit like most of those reasons. We're not going to do it anymore. So this is that than any other. Two things you guys actually get people to come out and talk. We've had contests, we have regularly post music of the day. Yeah, we post about deals and stuff like that and everything else. But still, it's very hard to get a lot of response.
Yeah, part of that is because Twitter is so oversaturated at this point that you see a lot of your Twitter feed sometimes if you follow the wrong people. There's a bunch of, check my thing out, check this, oh, this is awesome, look at this, check this, check this, check this. I agree. I do think that one thing I want Chris to weigh in on this too, but I do think that hitting it from multiple angles is important. I think it's the sort of thing they say in advertising that it takes someone about 5 times of hearing something before they'll actually remember it. They need to feel that way, but they can't feel that way all at once. If if in a 5-minute span, you go, I hit the Twitter, Facebook website, that to them is all but one blur. It's just one big thing that was hitting them, right? So what we tried to do in these periodic moments throughout the day is we would have a Twitter thing in the morning, we would have an interview which would release in the middle of the day, maybe the next day we would have something on Facebook, and try to spread it out so that there's continual mention of it, and hopefully a week or two, in the case of Kickstarter, it's a 30-day period we were trying to get funded. By the time we get to the middle of that period, they'd say, you know what, I've heard a lot about this, I do actually want to go back and check it out. That's one thing that's difficult, because you're right, you can have a ton of followers, and you throw something out there, and it's just crickets. It's not really crickets, it's, oh my god, they've gotten a bunch of people yelling at it at the same time about all these other things as well. One way or another.
Part of that, well, what would you say is the breakdown of your account in terms of original tweets, retweets, how you use it?
The vast majority of them are original tweets. We do retweets and other people in the games industry, but mainly we do post links to our articles, but we don't just, like throw a link out there and say nothing else. We have variants of it, and our writers themselves also tweet out their personal profiles on Twitter. And as I said, we have a loosely link, they include the link to YouTube channel. They don't have to leave Twitter, they can just see it right there in the feed. We include the link here everywhere we see it, something like that, we put that in the screen there. So,
Okay, so I think the problem you're having is not the Twitter box, and that you guys are on top of that. I think it's a problem of getting Twitter based to relate to each other. So, for instance, that's why Twitch came in. We have a lot of Twitter followers that are able to converse with each other.
we have had horrible failures of our Twitter. I actually had to actively go out and tell people, specific people, this stream is happening. And we're giving away copies of a very good game. And we were live streaming. 2 hours. We got less than 7 viewers, and we get 7 copies of the game.
Well, one thing you have to remember about Twitch, though, is that just as is the case with Twitter, people on Twitch will take a while to sort of build a critical mass. If you pop on one day and say, hey, we're doing this stuff, people will not even know that you exist. Man vs. Game is probably the largest streamer on Twitch right now, has something on the order of 100,000 followers or something absurd like that, maybe way more than that. An enormous amount of followers, an enormous amount of people. And so people come because they know about him. I've been streaming since April 2012, and I now am at about 2,140 followers, and it's beginning to accelerate. The follower numbers are beginning to accelerate and grow, but I also stream 3 days a week, and, not a ton, usually about 4 hours each time. There are people who stream 7 days a week, and you want to be careful not to make it into a full-time job separate from your main job, which in my case is writing. But I think the thing I would say about that is you have to try to establish your presence somewhat before you're actually start going to push things actively to bring people back to your site. I've sold a ton of books on Twitch, and I've done a ton of things like that, but I did have a presence before that I kind of got started.
So I actually have experienced with that. Another site I was doing for where I was mainly doing the Twitch streaming for them. We were doing it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Still wasn't taking a long while to get the massive. And there seems to be a bit of a slowdown actually for if you're press, not if you're a site or if you're a person. It's a very big divider.
Well, yeah, you mentioned that. One of the biggest, Structure, I think, recently closed their Twitch channel because they couldn't pay their casters anymore.
Yeah.
But also for other reasons that I'm going to years later. And that's a huge site. They get tons of traffic. Sometimes it's a little bit. Right now, I think it's gonna get a little harder on Twitch per se, because of the buyout by Amazon, because everybody's jumping on, because now you can stream from your Xbox One and your PS4.
Just more people.
The thing is, if you have 6,000 followers on Twitter, how long did it take to build that up? Is that an organic move? Like, how many of them are real? Kind of the question I'm getting.
Most of them are organic, and we regularly get new followers every week. I usually get 3 to 7 followers every week. It's just that not a lot of them seem to get up. And a number of them are from the site began before I was even on board. But for instance, they were organic. There were some paid advertisements back when the site was first launched to get me to generate interest, but for instance, they were all organic followers. There's no bot followers that we're aware of.
Yeah, the one thing I would say about that, and I want to take your question and then we got to wrap up. The only thing I would say to sort of about that is that also the more interactive, not just sort of announcing things and waiting for them to come, but the more you can interactively be involved with them on Twitter and elsewhere, the more it's there's so much back and forth, so much interaction, so much connection that they do feel like they're part of the community. It's kind of a community building thing, and that's a big part of what Kickstarter ultimately does as well. But I'm happy to talk more with you.
Yeah, definitely come talk to me.
Come talk to us. We might do some of these stuff. Quickly, I'm sorry, quickly, I didn't mean to take so long to get back to you.
Oh, that's fine. You found your stuff on Kickstarter, some of the things like Indiegogo.
Yep.
Why did you decide to do Kickstarter over the
Two principal reasons. I actually have an anthology that I did for charity to benefit the victims of Hurricane Sandy. I had a story, an anthology that was on Indiegogo. The two reasons we went for Kickstarter were, number one, exposure and name recognition. Because although Indiegogo is there, I have a friend who somewhat, a little bit unfairly says that Indiegogo is where you go with failed Kickstarters. The idea is that Kickstarter is sort of the big name in the industry. It's what people immediately think of. If you say Kickstarter to people, they'll go, oh yes, I know what that is. They have accounts. It's integrated with Amazon. All of those things makes it easier for people to be able to contribute there. So that was one reason. The other reason was that because Kickstarter has a model that allows other people to boost the signal, they are much better at that, in my opinion, than Indiegogo is. I think they're much better at it, at being able to sort of go to different places and say KickTrack or these other places we've mentioned before, podcasts that are just about Kickstarter. It's just much more of a kind of infrastructure in place for Kickstarter at the moment. However, Indiegogo, though, does have a good presence in graphic novels. In fact, one of the companies we're working with on Icarus is called Comic Mix, and they have worked with Indiegogo as a funding source. Also, Indiegogo does charity work and does nonprofit stuff, which Kickstarter does not do. You can't do nonprofit stuff on Kickstarter, but you can on Indiegogo. So I do think Indiegogo is a good sort of source down the line. And there's other ones, Patreon, which is something which goes on a month-by-month basis to content creators. That's another model which can certainly work too. So definitely there's rivals that are coming down the pike, and I think Kickstarter will have to attend to those. But at least when we released in January 2014, it was just a much larger venue with more exposure. And that was ultimately. All right, well, the next group I think is coming in. If you'd like to know more from us, we have cards up front. We also have cards over at the hall where we're going to be until the end of the day. And we're happy to talk about this as well. Thank you all so very much. Thank you. And thanks, Twitch. Let me just finish up one first here.
You would never interrupt your class. And he was down with his grandmother, who's like 89 years old.
Oh, okay, no, that's fine.
And so I'm like, well,
So don't worry about that. That's totally fine. I didn't even, that wouldn't even occur to me. No, that's no problem at all. So I hope she's okay.
she is, he just forgot.
You just forgot. Okay.
We were all talking about it, sorry, so.
I got you. No, that's fine. That's fine. No, that's fine. That's completely fine.
Did you say you had your contact information?
Yes, I do. Let me. Let's see. Oh, that's Chris's. Did you put mine? That's Chris that I just gave you, and that's me. Sure. I'm going to be right across the way. Actually, we're over exhibiting. There's a table right in front near the registration at the exhibition hall, and I have books there and more information with the banners and stuff like that too. So, yeah, thank you. Sure, no problem. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. You too. All right. This is yours. You want to say bye to the nice people on Twitch?